Hey, Night Q, what is up? And hello to our listeners. Welcome to another episode of The Invisible Men.
Hello, Ian. So happy to be back with you. I must tell you, though, I'm very intimidated for this episode because I've got in front of me two of America's great educational leaders, and I ain't got much to bring to the table. So I might just listen to you all riff for the next 30 minutes.
No, 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 no. I share your enthusiasm because we have the legendary Derrell Bradford, who I have known for some time because we have been in the trenches together in the fight for education reform,
Yes.
school choice.
Yes.
Derrell leads 50 CAN, which most people don't know actually stands for the 50 State Campaign for Achievement Now.
Bravo.
Not tomorrow, not a few weeks from now, not yesterday, 50 State Campaign for Achievement Now. It's a very, very important organization, and Derrell has been just a tireless leader for kids, period. And great admiration. And Derrell, so welcome. Welcome to the show.
This is awesome. This is like a eulogy. I don't even know how to... Can we call it now?
Yeah, I know exactly. It's already done. My work here is done. Yes. So Derrell, I can't wait. There's some big issues right now in our country as it relates to school choice, ed reform, federal tax credits that we need to talk about. Because there has been a kind of a lull. Well, it'd be interesting to get your take on it. A lull on choice in certain parts of the country, but now there's a window of opportunity, it seems. So I can't wait to get into it. But before we get there, why don't you let our audience, who is Derrell? Who is Derrell Bradford? Before you were the man as you are now. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, and also, because we like to get a sense from our guests, because a lot of issues we do talk about are related to race. When did race become a thing for you, or like when did you realize, wow, like people's skin color seems to have some meaning, positive or negative?
Yeah. So, first of all, I just want to say, Ian, thank you very much. Ian and Nike, thank you very much for having me on. It is a privilege. I know some of your other guests. I'm not sure I deserve to be in this pantheon, but I will try my best. So thank you very much. And also, I would say, my family's Catholic, so I don't deal well with praise. So I just want to throw that out there as well. So, but I'll try to take it on board as best as I can. So, so I grew up in Baltimore. I grew up in Southwest Baltimore in a neighborhood that Baltimoreans know. It's called Sandtown, Winchester. And sort of like, sadly, the thing that would put it on most people's minds is that it is the neighborhood that Freddie Gray grew up in and died in, right? So,
Yes.
And I've written a lot about my schooling experience there because, I had only the first school I ever went to I was zoned for. I had an aunt who worked in the Baltimore City public school system, so she really looked out for me. Like our family, we cared about education. My aunt had, knew all the tricks of the trade, got me into like a regional gifted and talented that I never would have, gotten into otherwise. Like I got, I tested into it. I went to like the best middle school you could possibly go to. I was like zoned out of it in a neighborhood called Roland Park, which is sort of famous architecturally because it was designed by William Olmsted. And there's like a whole history of like restrictive covenants around who could live there and all this other stuff. Is really like no black people, no Jewish people, kind of back in the day, which I didn't know until much later in life. And for many sort of fortuitous and serendipitous reasons, I wound up getting a scholarship to go to an all-boys K-12 independent high school that I went to from 7 to 12. Played football and cross. Learned I like to sing. Sang in the choir. Learned I like to write. A whole bunch of other things. The most important thing that sort of ever happened to me And then I got lucky again. I got recruited to play lacrosse at a bunch of schools. So I went to Dartmouth for a year. Decided I wanted to be in a city. Transferred to the University of Pennsylvania. I rode crew for most of a year while I was there. And then I graduated from there in 1996. So that is sort of like the first.
Okay, this is crazy. I had no idea. Okay, keep
Yeah,
going.
I try to keep it low, and so I've been incredibly fortunate. Just to sort of like answer part of your question out of out of sequence. The high school I went to. This is in the in the mid '80s, late '80s. They were interested in trying to integrate. So that was part of how I wound up being on their radar, sort of very fortunately. And I was the only black kid in my class in high school for 3 to 4 years. I was there. It's like a small school, like 256 kids, I guess, but like 7 black kids. I was one of the poor kids, so like you're black and you're poor. You're at the school, and I was just trying to figure it all out. Like I didn't, and this is part of why I think my views on school integration are a little bit heterodox, because while I think it's an important strategy to help build a more you know inclusive society. I use that word sort of like I hope it doesn't sound derisive,
Yep.
uh, but being the integrator is hard, right? Being the one kid who is supposed to go and like basically represent your people to a bunch of people you don't know, like it's its own thing. It's an
Yep.
experience. And the upsides I think I've sort of chronicled already, but it's not like it wasn't without downsides. And I remember sort of writing about a time where I was at a kegger as a senior at some kid's house that was getting like built. So we were like out in the back in the garage while the house is under construction. It's a whole bunch of kids I'm going to school with and other kids. And that was the first time I heard, one of my classmates, he was a year behind me, like, he's a guy I played lacrosse with, used the word nigger around, like he didn't know I was there. So that hurt like a lot. And it changed, how I felt, about being there and my classmates in a lot of respects. And so again, to go back to this thing, like I was hurt by that, but I, sort of felt like I could move beyond it, had to move beyond it because I was trying to get mine, like
Right. Right.
I was there to graduate and go on and see what would happen. And like, I think most people who are, maybe like, Ian, I'm sure you and IQ probably experience this too. It hurts and it's unfair, but you have to, put it away and you
Yep.
keep moving because that's, the only way to go is up. So,
Yep.
um,
Wow. Did you in that, I don't know if you remember the moment, well, it's probably do remember the moment. Did you say anything to that your
yeah,
classmate or?
I confronted him. And it was really like, what are you doing? Kind of like a what are you doing kind of thing. And I can't remember whether or not he really apologized, but I knew I felt hurt was kind of the thing, And when we left, because the kegger got busted up, I was with my other three guys I played football with, and we just sort of spun off into the rest of the evening. Three white guys, right? They were my boys, right? They came to
Right.
pick me up. We went off. We did our thing, and it's like the kind of thing that is so shocking in the moment. You can't
Yeah.
easily forget it, but it didn't stop me from living my
Yep.
life and having my friends and all those things. So
Wow, the resiliency. It is amazing how moments like that, when you're younger, you carry it with you. And for
yeah,
some, just as you're saying, for some kids, it becomes a, a source of anger and contempt and resentment. And others, you realize, okay, it's more about that person, not me.
yeah.
And I just got to keep going.
Well,
Wow.
you're what's the name though? So like, here's the proto small time Ian part of Derrell's life. So I moved to New York after I graduated from college, and I got a job working in publishing. Because like all writers think working in publishing, you want to be an editor, you think you're going to write, you realize that you just show up, they give you a stack of paper and tell you to go copy it. So that was like the first year and a half. And then I got this job working for this magazine that still exists. It's called City Guide. So if you're in New York, you're in Manhattan, you're in a hotel or whatever, you want to know which show to go to or where to go eat or shop. It was that thing. So I was like the editor of City Guide. And
Wow.
then from 1999 to 2001, I launched and ran its sister magazine, which was called 411. And that was a monthly bar, club, nightlife, like music magazine. People were like, "What was the job like?" I was like, "We just used to show up and get toe up and write about it." That was the whole. That was the whole thing. And so I was a culture person, you know.
Wow.
And then the magazine folded in August 2001, and then 9/11
The
happened.
9/11 occurred, right?
That's right. That's right. I was living in Manhattan, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And in the spring of that year, a friend of mine from college was like, "Oh, my dad just started this nonprofit. Maybe you can help him." And that April, I got on a plane to go to Milwaukee to find out about the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program and what multiple authorizers were and what district competition was, and I had a great mentor as I was a communications officer, and I kept like learning and moving up, and I learned how to like work with legislatures and like get into politics and make my case in the public sphere and get some skills leading an organization and that kind of stuff. And I've just been very, very lucky from then until now. So
Got it. Got it. So, well, maybe we can make the pivot because it sounds like your experience of school choice up at that point was what it sounds like your family had been able to create for you, not the systems around you.
well, when I was in high school and in elementary school, whatever, there were no charter schools in America. They did not yet exist, right? The first charter school enrolls like 6 kids or whatever in Minnesota the year I graduated from high school. There were no private school choice programs, right? That's what the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program happens in 1999, I think. There were magnet schools, obviously, right? And we had a system of public school.
Right, but those were screened schools.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I go to Hartford Heights because I tested into it, at the time. And I gave a speech at the school that that the Brown daughters went to in Kansas, like in Topeka, maybe like a year ago. And I went back and was looking at like the redlining maps of Baltimore and the places I'd gone to school in them. And, I'd gone into school in a yellow one and I lived in a red one. D2 was the name of that, right? So I didn't really understand what education policy, education choice was until I got smacked in the face with the reality that there are all these kids across the country who are trying to have the experience I had, but who didn't have an aunt who could help you navigate these things, didn't have public policy levers like they had by the time I got the job, and it just all seems so incredibly unfair. And I always say to people, it's like, look, regular people, there's always school choice, right? Everybody likes school choice. The question is, do you like it just for you or for other people?
Right, exactly.
And there's 4 ways that people normally do school choice, right? You're lucky, like me. You're rich, in which case none of this matters, right? You pay tuition, or
You move.
that's right, or you get the ultimate bundle, which comes with your mortgage, right? You get your publicly subsidized private school that you want to go to, right? You're connected. That's the third one that nobody really talks about. Like, somebody who gets you the schooling hookup. And I remember Joel Klein said that when he took over the New York City DOE, there was an office there that used to help place the kids of highly connected people in government. He said that was the first office he closed, which which is hilarious. He was like, "Oh, I didn't know what that was for," And then the last one is that you lie, right? And so like address, sharing and those kinds of things. I mean, that's how most people, black people, white people, poor people, some rich people,
Yeah, right. And I remember parents actually imprisoned for doing things like that.
That's right. It is this organization called Available to All. They did a report on this. I think there's like 22 states. I think that's it. Where it's a criminal offense to lie about your address or share your address. Police routinely follow kids home to find out whether or not they live in the school district that the school is. Like, one of the questions that these address sort of police ask, they come and they say, "Where's your toothbrush?" to the kid at the home. There's a great book called A Fine Line that a friend of mine, Tim DeRoche, wrote, and there's a chapter 6. It's the only one you need to read. That's the one where they interview private investigators who say, yeah, we normally send women with high-powered cameras to take pictures of the kids because it's less creepy, it's less likely to have somebody act out, and that it's harder in the wintertime because it's dark and the kids have scarves and stuff on. I mean, this is real. This is terrible. This is terrible stuff. I'm laughing to keep from crying about it, but
No,
this
no. I mean, I know, Nike, you want to get in here too, but this is it. This is what you think about. Think about the mom who's being investigated by one of these guys, right? Someone is trailing you, asking your kid, "Where's your toothbrush?" And your crime is that, whatever decisions you may have made in your own life, you just want something different for your kid.
better.
Better.
Yeah, better.
Okay.
I just want to say I was one of those kids. So in high school, in my senior year of high school, my parents got divorced. We lost our home. And I was going to Arlington High School. And my mother and I moved into an apartment in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I kept going to Arlington High School. And I just found out recently, my mother told me, nearly 90 years old she is, that she used the address of my best friend and said that I lived at their house.
Yep.
And of course, this is 1984, where they probably didn't have the police force to track me down. But I remember every day I would take the bus going in the opposite direction, and people would ask me, "Where are you going?" And I was always so embarrassed about that. And so you've literally brought me back to 1984 just with that.
Yeah.
So it's a thing, and boy, I can only imagine what it's like today.
Yeah, Ian, just to put a bow on it, it's one of the best lines from season 1 of The Wire is where Omar Little is he's down at the station and he goes, "Man, the game is out there." So this is how it is, right? This is how people are.
And you do what you need to get by. You do
That's
what
right.
you need
That's
to do
right.
to get by. All right. So then, why don't we pivot to just give a lay of the land right now. If you're an average kid in the United States, and you can distinguish between blue states and red states if you want, but just do most kids actually? Let's put it this way: most kids have school choice. Middle class and upper class kids, they have school choice. Right. Just as you said, their parents have the wherewithal to have money. They can send them to private school. They can move to a nice neighborhood where their public schools are free. So just give a quick lay of the land. For low-income kids of any race across the country, what kind of options do they typically have, would you say, in our country?
Yeah, so I'll answer that, and then I want to take it up a level because I think it's really important that we get at like what's going on nationally. I mean, both at the state level and the federal level, because I think that's incredibly important. So if you are a low-income kid in a fair few American cities at this point, right? You have, let's say you have the full suite. You might not have all of these, but you may have, right? Access to a gifted and talented program, right? Which is a test in option for kids with high aptitude. Totally supportive of that, right? There's a whole bunch of policy around who gets recommended to take these things. That's important because you could be a very bright kid, your teacher doesn't look favorably upon you, so like there are lots of auto enrollment kind of approaches. Those are things that people are talking about to take the public perception out of it and just get to pure achievement. But that is one thing. You could be fortunate enough to have intra-district school choice, which is that you can go to any public school in the district where you live. That is one flavor of school choice. It's not super widespread, but it is one of them. You can have access to what's called a magnet school, which is a theme school where you may or may not have to test in, or have a specific ability. So like there are arts magnets, like, fame, whatever, right? And then there are would amount to high performing science magnets, like like Stuyvesant, where you went, even.
Well,
Uh,
no, no,
you
no, no. Stuyvesant is a safety school. I went to
know,
Brooklyn Tech.
I thought you were a Stag guy. All right, my bad. That's all good. That's
There
all
you
good.
go. There you go. There you go.
I think with Brooklyn Tech probably has more Nobel laureates than.
See, now that's what I'm talking about. I'm
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for mine.
All right, it's all good. It's all good. So you could go to one of those, which I'm also very supportive of. Depending on the state you're in, you could be in an inter-district school choice program, which means you can go to a public school that is not in the district that you live in. And so in New Jersey,
Without testing.
without testing, right? But there are also issues around that, because a lot of the time receiving districts get to decide whether or not they want to participate, even if they have space, right? And if you're a kid with special needs, they can say, well, we can't service you, so you can't come. So much
Yeah.
for available to all. But that is an option. And actually, it's a very popular one. There are 1.6 million kids in America right now participating in inter-district public school choice. So that is an option. And then there are what are probably the most successful, or at least widely known, public school options, which are called charter schools, right? So, and those are public schools that are not run by public school districts. They are run by independent boards. They are brought into existence by what is called an authorizer, and they are chosen by families. And if they don't meet the sort of tenets of the deal they make, they can be closed. And so there's a really strong one of those called Vertex Academies, where you are the prime mover on. And
Yes.
I happen to be on the board of another set of those called Success Academy.
Yes. And shout out to Success Academies. New York State just released its annual results of the annual assessments. I think the numbers are north of 90%.
Yeah,
All the students. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's basically the most important thing I do civically. It's like, and it just puts the sword to the lie that it can't be done. Like we're 85%, African American, Hispanic, overwhelmingly low income. The kids are killing it, and we set the bar high. We tell them that it's high. We match our values, the kids' aspirations, and the families' hopes together. We try to get the best teachers we can, and we're equally high bar about them, and the results follow, right? So it's a wonderful place, and we could do more.
And we're going to come to this, and yet it is one of the most vilified networks, hated networks, opposed networks, even with all those incredible results. So we're gonna get to that, because it's all wrapped up in this conversation around choice.
So
Okay.
so that's kind of all of the things under the public umbrella. So you could also, obviously, you could go to a private school. You could get a scholarship like I did. You could go to a private school, or increasingly across the country, you can participate in an ESA program, an Education Savings Account program. That's what that's called. Or a voucher program, although people are increasingly moving toward ESA programs, or or some kind of tax credit device or whatever that allow you to attend private school, like a private school that you would like, a participating private school. Then, right, there is a very entrepreneurial sector in education, which is normally privately funded, but not super expensive, that we call microschooling. So these are lots of entrepreneurial people. In a lot of respects, it's like the same folks that led the kind of childcare movement of the 80s, right? Entrepreneurial women with with experience in their communities, building very local solutions for small groups of kids, right? So this is the current manifestation of that. It's a sector with a lot of energy, a lot of electricity. You'll find tons of disaffected, or sort of bored educators there who just had an idea and just want to go out and work it, for 10 or 15 kids. And so it's sort of a wonderful place to look at. And then the last part of it is just, homeschooling is like booming. I don't know if you saw, they rolled up on Mark Zuckerberg the other day because he was getting his homeschool on. So it's this is a thing that the wealthy and the independent, not just the wealthy, but the regular folks too are really taking on board. The percentage of Black homeschoolers has tripled. Um,
Yes, yes.
with, partly catalyzed by the pandemic, but not entirely because of it.
I mean,
Uh,
what's interesting about the Zuckerberg example, so Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, as Terrell just said, were just, they were caught. You know, well, they were caught actually, banding together with a few other parents to essentially create a nice little homeschool. And his wife had a pre-K program, and he's in, I think it was East Palo Alto, which they've shut down because they're no longer prioritizing it. But what's interesting is he's attacked for doing that, for trying to do the best thing for whatever he thought was right for his kid. But why are we angry at him and not saying, well, okay, well, if he can do that, why can't we have that
why can't
same
everybody?
right?
Yeah.
The answer isn't vilifying him. The answer is, let's create a pathway so that every parent has a right to construct the education that they want for their kid.
So I think you have gotten at something that is incredibly important about this entire discussion about choice and the devices that, the policy devices that allow us to make more schools that people want, right? The political, intellectual heuristic around good things is that we are lucky when we get them. They are scarce, and so it is up to us to decide who should enjoy them. If you're one of us, right, the approach is, the human condition is a striving one. Ingenuity, markets, whatever you want to call it, are important factors in improving the human condition. We need as many people, as many entrepreneurs on the issue, on the problem as possible, and then we can grow. We can make the pie, larger.
100%.
Right? And so let's talk shit about Stuyvesant since you didn't go there, right? So every year, tragically, we get the results of the freshman class of Stuyvesant, right? Which is that 750, kids and single-digit African American and Hispanic kids, right? Which is a real tragedy, and which I continue to believe is a K-8 problem, and emphasis on studying for the SHSAT and all of those things, which we can talk about if you want to. I suspect your opinion will be controversial on this, as mine probably is too. But there's nothing special about the number 750. When you look at the pool and how many kids are good enough to go to Stuyvesant, right? But yet, nobody says, why don't we open Sty 2, right? Where's the second campus of Sty, right? I'm talking to somebody who's opened multiple charter schools. I'm sure
Yes.
you understand
Yes,
this
of
already.
course.
There's no
Let's
reason.
create more great high schools.
That's right.
Totally with you. It's just, yeah, there's this theory of scarcity
Right.
versus one of abundance.
100%. That's right. That's right.
Right?
And everything we do, not because Ezra Klein's thing isn't really about this. Like, abundance is kind of like a cool label for a different theory of government that has some good things in it. But the real move is anti-scarcity. That's it. Like, what do you do to make things that people signal strongly to you that they want and desire? Like, what do you do to make it so they can have more of those things? And how do you create the conditions so that people can try more new things at a price and scale competitive way, that when you get something that's fire, you can just light it up and more people can enjoy it.
Yeah, I love it. That's the name of your next book, by the way, Anti-Scarcity.
So I want to ask both you gentlemen about the implications of AI around scarcity.
Yeah.
Because right in the not too distant future, every child will have their own private tutor, executive coach, whatever you want to call it. And it's going to be a very talented resource. How do you all think about that? And will it create the kind of opportunities that we want to think it will?
So let me go first, and then Ian will give you something that is Shakespearean to follow it up, I'm sure. So here's the first thing I want to say. So when we talk about this at 50 Can, we have a lot of humanities people at 50 Can. So, one of the important things to remember is that we are talking about a silicon-based intelligence that runs on electricity, that has been trained on everything we have ever done, and that is incredibly good at mimicking what we have done as a species in a way that sounds new, right? And that doesn't mean that it can't invent or come up with new things, but it is a different kind of intelligence than a carbon-based intelligence that is social and that trained it, right? And that being us.
Yes.
And so one of the things whenever we're thinking about this is like, I always say like, I think the classics are going to make a comeback, because the only way that you know whether or not an alien intelligence is being straight with you is if you have a massive sort of resource, a massive pool of experience, right? Human experience to draw from, to compare it to. That's right, right? And that includes, knowing, being good at math, right? Like, which is really a thing. And it includes like, knowing Shakespeare and like history of the West and all these other things, right? These things become more and more valuable. So I just want to highlight that as like a thing that lives next to us. At the same time, this piece in the Wall Street Journal last week about how, it was 2 weeks ago, about how the entry-level job ban is getting smashed. Like for jobs you would want, right? Like at a consulting firm or any of these other things, because AI can do these things, right? And it requires, if you're going to manage the AI agents that have those jobs, you have to have the kinds of skills we just talked about, right, to do that. But that's actually like, those are second rung skills, right? So you either have to, it has huge implications for schooling, because you either have to get the first rung skills in high school or earlier now, right?
Yes.
Or you have to figure out a way to sort of self-train on the first rung so that you can come in at the second one. And this is hugely disruptive for new employees. I think it's incredibly important for schooling institutions of all types. It's hugely disruptive, and I'm not quite sure people are aware of all this. Even for us, we still talk about AI and abstractions. Like I'm like a bit of a Luddite. I like to write my own things. But I'm aware of the fact that there are, like 5 years ago we were like every kid needs a code. Right. And now the market's like, no, not really. Not really. How fast did that happen? So that's it's scary stuff, and it's scary stuff. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's peril and promise at the same time, right? We are we run Vertex, which is a international baccalaureate high school. We're moving more in the classical direction, right? So our curriculum will be very grounded in what I call the wisdom of the Stoics. And we're actually creating a custom GPT. So this is so take Chat GPT.
Oh, you told me about this. Yes.
Take a Chat GPT, which is built on a large language model. So everything we've ever known, throughout history feeds into a particular tool that uses that information then to spit out recommendations based on prompts. Well, imagine if we had a tool that wasn't schooled on everything we've known, but solely schooled on the works of Aristotle, or solely schooled on the work of Plato or Socrates. And so we're envisioning this tool that our kids will have in their pocket when they run into contemporary issues. What would Socrates do? Isn't that kind of cool? And so the whole idea is that, to hopefully help our kids observe what some of the greatest minds have ever thought. There's a group called Free Black Thought that's doing something similar with the work of Thomas Sowell.
Oh, cool.
So it's very interesting. So that's kind of the upside. Those are kind of interesting applications. But Nike, the fact of the matter is most of us don't know. we're all kind of riding the wave. I mean, Chat GPT 5 just came out a week or two ago. It's incredible, but it's also hallucinating in weird ways. And so, but the thing, just to get back to like the thing that makes ultimately, hopefully, is to give power to individuals
Right.
so that they can, whatever the environment is, they can choose the right environment for their kid. Seriously, because at the end of the day, we cannot fathom what 10 years from now is going to look like in terms of schooling options. The best thing we can do is put parents in a position that they can opt into the best environment for their kid.
Can I say something about that? Because I think, um, look, we have, like, I'm a fan of excellence, right? I am, as I know you guys are, as well. And so some people sort of wince when you say, look, we need to let, the families decide, right? Well, families need to play a bigger role, or more heretical, we need to let the market act, right?
Yeah.
Like some more. And so I always go back to this thing. Do you know, I think it's 2 million. There was a time when it rained on the earth for like 2 million years, right? So, and then after that, the soup, whatever that's left, you put that on fast forward for like however many millions of years, and you get us, right? The important thing is that for 2 million years, people had their hands off, right? Like everybody's hands off. We're gonna rain for like 2 million years. I think this specific time, right, with everything that's going on, like the what I like to call the revolution in school finance, right? That's the tax
Mm.
credits, ESAs, all these other things, right? Uh, a real change in how people consume school, right? You got the bundle, you got bundle plus, which is like the best bundle plus tutoring. You got the half bundle, it's like hybrid homeschooling, all this other stuff. You got the growth of homeschooling stuff. You have lots of people who are just getting into the field and want to
Yep.
try new ideas. Like, I'm unwilling to say that all of those things together should produce X right now. I think we need to hang back and let it rain for like a little while and see
What
what
emerges, right?
grows. That's right. What emerges? What
Well,
emerges?
and just the idea that the whole point is, let's say Success Academy, right, where 90% of the kids are, passing state tests and such. But the point is still, it's not necessarily the right environment for everyone.
Every kid. That's right.
So,
That's
so
right.
even if there is an emergent idea which looks really great, it may not be good for my kid,
Yeah.
or my neighborhood, or it doesn't align with my values,
Yeah,
right?
dude, I am. I don't know about you, Nike, but I am childless, right? But word on the street is that if you have more than one child, sometimes you look at one of them and you're like, "Oh, you're mine," and you look at the other one and you're like, "I don't know where you came from." These kids, they breathe the same air, they eat the same food, right? They're raised by the
100%.
same people. They're wildly different from one another, right? And this is
100%.
I mean, one other thing I'll just say on this is, like, I always love these people that are like, you need to sacrifice your
Yeah.
ambition for your child for like the greater good. I'm like, listen, dog. I got like a million years worth of evolution that tells you that doesn't work with the human animal, right? Like, if you are asking a parent to subvert the parental instinct for some amorphous, distant good, like, that is a losing battle, not just like philosophically, but politically.
But frankly, that is what generally progressive ideology is right now.
Yeah.
You can't have choice because you can't, if everyone can't have access to a better option, then no one should have access to that option. And that, okay, so then let's talk about, because I think this is all a great lead up to what's kind of a political earthquake that at least has happened in education reform. And, our current president pushed through a piece of legislation under the aegis of one big beautiful bill. Tucked within that bill is something called ECHA, which stands for Educational Choice and
Well, so that it used to be called ECHA. Now it is more commonly referred to as the Federal Education Scholarship Act, I think is what
Well,
that
there you go.
is.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
and
Federal Scholarship Tax Credit. That's what people
there it
call
is.
it.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so why don't you just describe what this is? Because it's the first ever, essentially, federal school choice program. However, there are some very big caveats as to whether or not it in fact will be available to every kid in this country.
Yep. Yep. So it is not novel in what it does, but it is novel in how it does it. So if you are, let's say you're like a local skillionaire, there's a couple of those around, it is common for local skillionaires, as I understand it, to write checks to organizations like the Children's Scholarship Fund or a local public education fund or a local Friends of charter school organization or
Yep.
something like that, so that they can give out scholarships or, you know, buy time on a soccer field for enrichment or go on trips or
SAT prep.
SAT prep or do any of these things, right? And routinely at the state level, you get like a deduction. Some places might give you a credit, but you get some sort of tax benefit for making that contribution. Now you can do the same thing at the federal level. So the one big beautiful bill has tucked in it, as you described, a provision that will let individual taxpayers get a credit for up to $1,700 of their federal tax liability to do the same thing. So you can write a $1,700 check to a scholarship granting organization. There are rules around how those organizations come into existence. They have to be 501, nonprofits, registered with the Department of Treasury. Sorry about that. So the program is managed in Treasury, is my understanding. And you can do all the same things, right? An SGO, which is what we call them, can give away scholarships. Public school can start one, charter schools can start one. You can do tutoring, enrichment. You can do all of these things. It's sort of a broad educational benefit that now lives in the federal tax code. It is permanent and it has no cap. So if every person in America who was eligible to pay federal income tax decided to write a $1,700 check for free, basically to them, because you owe the money to the federal government, boom, the pot would fill up a ton. And just to give people some scale on this, if 588,000 people take the credit, you get $1 billion, right? There's $1 billion in the pool. So there's some organizations that are obviously like incredibly well positioned to maximize this. You can think of like Charter School Network,
Sure.
Networks of Catholic schools and networks of independent schools. You have to have at least 2 schools,
Yep.
in the group and at least 10 kids. So you can't open an SGO just for your
kids.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
right. That's fair. That's fair.
No bueno. And when I say that what this does, so Arizona has an existing state policy that looks like this. So does Minnesota, and so does Pennsylvania, which has had one forever. Tom Ridge passed the educational improvement tax credit there, so that's like a state credit to businesses and individuals for scholarship granting to support scholarships, low-income kids in Pennsylvania. So this is it's a big deal because there's never been anything like this at the federal level, and the scale of it is potentially pretty epic. Where the friction happens, right, is that a condition of getting this thing done in the congressional reconciliation package is that states get to opt into the program. So the governor has to say, yeah, I want to do this. And red state governors, who are sort of going gangbusters on school choice right now, not just gangbusters on school choice, by the way, like Louisiana, for instance, is the state that went that had the largest gains on the NAEP in the most recent administration. They went from 32nd to 16, right? So they did science of reading and math and tutoring and all these other things. So there's far more going on there than just school choice, but school choice is really important to this. All the red states are basically going to be like, let's do it.
Yeah.
The question is whether or not teachers unions are going to be able to stop blue state governors from doing it. And Oregon and New Mexico, their governors have already said we're out, which is sort of hilarious, right? So, and I think New Mexico's governor might be up for re-election next year, and I think termed out. So like maybe that doesn't matter there. But these two people said no already. But this week, the governor of last week, the governor of North Carolina, their legislature passed a bill saying you need to opt in, and he said, well. I want to see the rules. So he didn't say no. He vetoed this bill.
Right. That's a sign. That's a sign.
That is much smarter. And I suspect Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania would opt in because the teachers union, they hate him anyway. And the state already has a program at the state level that mirrors this at the federal level. So I just want to, I'd say that all to say that like the governors are in an interesting, blue state governors are in an interesting position. They can say, look, I want to provide a financial benefit to public schools, public charter schools, private schools, whatever, in my state from this program at the federal level, right, that everybody can get in on. Or they can say, I'm going to opt out, and people will still take the credit and just send their money to other states. So if you want to have like the equivalent of the education dodo, right, you want to lay your eggs in another state, you want to fund somebody else's SGO, you can go right ahead. But I guarantee a $1,700 credit on people's federal income tax, people are going to take that.
Of course. Why wouldn't they? Right. Why wouldn't they? Right.
That's right. And if you turn this money down, like there's 33 elections next year, 33 I think it's 36 governor's races up, 33 sort of domestic, and then like Guam and something else. I don't know, right? Don't show up talking about you want to raise taxes to send more money to schools when you're ready to turn this down. Yeah, yes.
Actually, to free money, to philanthropic money. So it's not even government dollars, right? By the way, I just read this. Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, one of the largest teachers union, she just gave a speech 2 weeks ago and said this credit is, quote, literally taking money from our most vulnerable students, end quote, and handing it to, quote, rich folks for vouchers, right?
Yeah, I always like, whenever I watch any of these things, I sit on like a rubber tire because I don't want to get shocked when the lightning strikes. It's just not real. Like I couldn't look at myself in the mirror and say something that
100%.
Inaccurate and yeah, I'll be generous, inaccurate. And
You said it to applause, by the way. So
and notably, she didn't say anything about collecting $190 billion worth of federal money for keeping schools closed for too long, which disproportionately affected the kids she says are going to be hurt most by a program that is meant to help them get scholarships and support to go wherever they want to. The program is income limited, too. I mean, it's got a fairly high threshold, but it's like the rich people don't even get to participate.
Right. Okay. So how do we break this impasse? So here we have, as you said, it's unlimited. It's privately funded.
Right.
And what's also important is that this tax credit, it would allow a poor kid to pay tuition at a private religious school, right? They'd suddenly, and the scholarship amount will vary depending on the state or the scholarship granting organization. But the idea is that it makes private schools more in reach for kids. But also, if you're in a public school currently and you don't want to leave your school, you can still benefit from it.
Correct.
As you were saying earlier, you could use that money for SAT prep. You could use it for high impact tutoring. You could use it for college trips. But the whole idea is that there's some SGO, scholarship granting organization, that has some pre-approved education related expenses that these scholarships can be used for.
Yeah.
To me, it is, I don't know, it's a watershed moment in education reform. And my hope, Darrell, is that because there's been a lot of division in the ed reform movement over the last 10, 20 years, and maybe it was accelerated after George Floyd. I don't know what you think about that. But it feels like this should be a thing that actually brings normally warring factions back together.
Yeah, so I agree with all this, and I just want to assert this, and I don't want to sound um, salty about it, but the most important. Two things. So one is that it's important technically when talking about this program, right? It's a multi-use ESA, right?
Right.
It's not a voucher, right? Because a lot of like a voucher is like a seat. The uses of this thing are so broad and diverse, right? That it's a real shame to not participate, right? And all of the things that you said also being true. So I just want to say that. Here's the thing that matters to me most. Lots of folks, lots of well-meaning folks, worry about what will happen when or if a policy is passed to, let's say, like the most disaffected folks, right? Like low income kids, kids of color, like a lot of our allies. Like this is why they got into the work, right? I know it's why I got into the work. This is what they care. This is what they care about most, and so they're wary of the new, right, or the novel, or the unknown. All of these things have happened already, right? So we're not talking about things that might happen. We are talking about a revolution in school finance at the state and federal level that before the federal thing, half of the kids in the country were eligible for an ESA. Literally half. Now, in some ways, all of them are eligible for some piece of this new way we are thinking about financing education and access to it in America, right? Like in states and nationally. It is inane and irresponsible to not think about how we maximize the opportunity in that reality, right? It's here. Like this isn't a debate about whether. It happened. And so I always encourage our colleagues to think about this. It's like, this is here now. Like, how do we make sure that the families you care about the most, whoever those families are, have the best opportunity, the most information, and the highest amount of resources to get the thing that they need so that their kid becomes the best version of themselves.
Well, Darrell, from your lips to God's ears, because I think that no, I really do. I think this is it's watershed. Like this is the kind of thing, there really is a stark line because there's almost zero rationale to be against this, unless you concoct a narrative, unless you can, like just what Randy Weingarten is. But it's privately funded, it's multi-use, as you say, and it's all voluntary. It's voluntary on the input side, and it's voluntary on if a kid applies for a scholarship. Again, I would hope, I don't know, I want to figure out a way to create a bipartisan effort where the coalition that used to exist around education reform, we could disagree on the environment, we could disagree on social policy, but we could agree that every kid deserves a shot. That's the way it used to be. This bill seems to create that opportunity for an alliance to be resurgent.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that, and I would just say, and I hope you both dig on this. Whenever I'm talking to reporters or whatever about these things, they say, this is really divided, like, between Democrats and Republicans, and then like there's a schism among, like geeky bald ed reformers about what's allowed and what's not allowed, and I'm like, listen, where there isn't a schism? With the families. Because if you show up in Arizona right now, guess what? You're going to find Democrats and Republicans using the ESA program. You will find Democrats and Republicans in their open enrollment program. You will find Democrats and Republicans in charter schools in Arizona, right? Because families are like, I want what works for me.
Correct.
And so in 5 years, you can go to Texas and run for governor as a Democrat, and you better not say nothing about that ESA program, because your base is going to be using the program, right? So this is just like this is a consequence of going universal. Like, I wasn't always a universalist, but now I am. Democratic families are going to use these things.
Yes.
That's the political reality for Democrats.
Maybe that is the most compelling argument for the progressive Democrats that seem to be 100% against school choice, which is that, okay, let's say you're completely operating out of self-interest and your own survival. Just read the tea leaves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Well, Derrell, this has been amazing.
No, this is great. You let me wear my colors too.
Yeah, I know. I haven't even given you a chance. Okay,
let's go.
Okay, you got to hook us up. Okay, what do the logos represent on your outfit there?
Okay, so this is Under Armour from.
Yeah, I know. Under Armour, we get that.
Yeah, so this is the cockerel. It's a rooster on a soccer ball for the Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. That's my squad.
Dude, you just called it a soccer.
I know.
How can you do that?
I'm a poser. Yeah.
Got it. And okay, we have to indulge this. How did you, kid growing up in the States, in Baltimore, become a football fanatic? And when I refer to football, I am referring it to what every other country other than the United States refers to as true football.
Yeah, so it's a late life affliction. So I was I had a friend. He's not with us anymore. He was a Liverpool fan, and we used to watch like World Cup or whatever at this bar when I lived in the city. And he was saying, Derrell, NBC just got the Premier League. You should start watching soccer. And I was like, well, maybe I'll think about it. And then a couple weeks later, I got a call from my boss, and they were like, well, you've been great, but you want to blow up the world, and we don't. So thanks for playing. Goodbye. And I was like, I guess I'm going to start watching soccer. So I had like a year-long courtship between a couple of teams. And there was a day when the two teams I was sort of looking at both lost. And in my mind, the Tottenham loss hurt more. And I signed up for a 12-year journey of real pain and suffering that just ended this spring when we won something. So yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Nike, we can't end without having Derrell do our exit ritual.
Oh, there's a ritual? Okay, what is it?
Well, take your glasses off. No. Well, when Nike and I started the Invisible Men way back when, we started it with this idea that, men like you, your work is invisible to millions and millions of kids across the country, particularly young black kids, young black men who may have a perception that they live in a country that's rigged against them, that everything they do is going to be thwarted. And, that was, we launched this with Rodney King many years ago, and then with George Floyd a few years ago. And so we created this character, Derrell, 16-year-old black kid, lives in forgotten USA. Maybe Derrell lives in a place where he doesn't have access to one of these tax credits, and he's just trying to figure out his way in the world. And so we like to end with just asking our guests, what advice would you give to Derrell, and for him to know that maybe there is a more empowering pathway?
Yeah, so I would just say like 2.5 things. One is that when someone wants to help you, let them. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that many more people want to help you than you could ever imagine. And a lot of the time, those people don't look like you. And the half thing is kind of builds on that. I can't tell you how many white people I've worked for in my life, right? Some of the richest people in the world, literally. And, they didn't owe me nothing, right? They didn't. I can remember when I was working at E3, my boss, Dan, he was like a father to me. He grew up in like the 30s. And we'd be driving around, and I was like, I'd always wonder, like, man, this guy, he's lived his whole life. He lived a life when the two of us couldn't have been in this car together. Like now he's driving me around, right? He's given everything he had in him, he was trying to put into me, right? Like I've been sort of forever grateful for that. And I just want to say that, like, for lots of people who believe in America, their aspiration for what the American experiment is supposed to be can't happen unless we are successful as well, unless Derrell is successful. And I would urge Derrell to just understand that, like, his opportunity for success fulfills more dreams than just his own. So
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, Mr. Derrell Bradford, president of 50 Can, tireless advocates for young people of all backgrounds. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you for sharing with our audience. Just really great stuff, man, and just more power to you. You epitomize why we launched this podcast in the first place.
Yeah, I'm gonna go throw myself out of the window. I appreciate it. It was wonderful to be on. Thank you to both of you. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Nike, anything to close us out?
You know, there was a lot of wisdom shared on this episode, but I'll tell you, the one thing that really struck me that you gentlemen both kind of reinforced is this 3x increase in homeschooling amongst Black Americans. And as I think about, the voting patterns, Ian, you and I talked about the voting patterns in the last election amongst Black American males. Some of these things we're seeing about marriage rates increasing, divorce declining. Boy, I feel like something is happening. And I listen to you two gentlemen articulate choice and agency and freedom. And I can feel it. Something is happening. And I want to think about how I can accelerate it and be a contributor to that thing. So I celebrate you both for what you do around education, because it's the key to unlock so much of the wonder of our great country.
All right. With that, gentlemen, thank you very much to our listeners. This was a great episode. If you'd like to see other episodes, please go to www.invisible.men. And we're also on wherever podcasts, Spotify, Apple, we're everywhere. So until next time, bye-bye.